Welcome guys to the next video from our WOSC 2025 games commentary. Today we're gonna look at the game between Shibutani Kazushi and Koshiro. Koshiro was representing Harbour as our Shogi Harbour champion, so he was our strongest player out there. And so turned out that Koshiro was faced with a strong Japanese player in the first round. So this game, a high-level Shogi, it's gonna be a nice game for us to take a look at. So let's go. Both sides indicated the static rook strategy. And here we have quite unusual silver 4-8 followed by gold 3-2. Why do I say unusual? Usually you would open the bishop diagonal and protect the approaching pawn push with the bishop for both sides, but here both players decided to keep bishop line closed. Naturally gold comes here to protect the bishop's head. And this pawn push is particularly interesting. It doesn't make maybe sense yet, but because center wants to hurry and develop the silver, at this moment, after the pawn exchange, rook is threatening to take that pawn, and the silver can move here. So the difference is, if this pawn was not here, but rather here, a pawn drop would kill the bishop. Now that the pawn is here, bishop can escape, threaten promotion. That is the meaning of this pawn in general. So both sides proceed with their camp development. We have a floating rook, silver going up, king going in the center. This is quite interesting. Koshiro is going for a certain balance. He's going for a low shape and well-defended camp on the sides, so that, for example, if the opponent had a bishop or a rook in hand, they're not gonna find easy spot to drop them. This is in opposition to old-style shogi, where you would build a castle like Yagura, and then castle the king inside of it so that it's protected by 3 generals. Here, we rather concentrate on the fact that king will have more space to run around. This is quite interesting topic that we'll cover in our next video, so if you don't wanna miss it, subscribe. We're gonna talk about modern theory from the book that we have been translating on our Discord. So back to the game. So Sente will open their bishop line now and show the intention to castle toward the left. Both sides open the bishop, and here bishop exchange is possible. You could argue that Sente pushed the central pawn, so it's not beneficial to them, therefore they push the central pawn to block it. In the future, perhaps going for attacking the center, right, against the king's head. So this is quite interesting move in my opinion. Koshiro in the meantime develops his knight, and what is Gote's objective here is to attack first. That's also the modern shogi theory. If you attack first, you have more chances to keep the initiative, you have more chances to control the flow of the game. Potentially, if your opponent makes a mistake, you will be able to, well, win, right? As opposed to defensive shogi, where you would have to defend first and deflect the attack, then counter attack, which would be 2 additional steps, right? So here, Koshiro decides that he has enough of development. He could have, of course, do something about the silver, maybe develop it up, maybe make his position a little bit higher toward the half gangi shape, but he decided to go for it. Pawn drop, pawn takes, rook takes, pawn drop, and surprisingly, rook takes 7-6. Surprisingly, because after silver 6-6, the rook has nowhere to go. So what's the plan here? Well, as we said before, his camp is pretty secure against certain drops, so he boldly sacrificed the rook for the gold. And normally this would be bad, right? Because the rook is worth 2 generals, so 2 golds. But the intention here is, if Koshiro has an attack using that gold and using his other pieces, while Sente has no way of utilizing this rook in attack, right? They don't have much space to use it at. Then Koshiro will have an attack, his opponent won't have a way to counter, therefore Koshiro will be better. Even though he's behind material, he will have more punch with his pieces, yeah? Of course, his attack will be weak, but the question is it going to be sustainable? Yeah. So let's find out. Pawn drop is here interesting. It's called focal point, focal drop. It means that many pieces can take this pawn, but none of them really gives a good outcome. For example, if bishop takes it, the lance will attack the bishop's head. If the knight takes it, pawn drop kills the knight. If the lance takes it, the knight would come in. So none of those look like a good option, therefore Center decides to pass there and develop the rook. And Koshiro, wow, sacrifice another piece. Here, if the lance were to take it, we lost another material, yeah, lance for the gold. So this time, because we already exchanged the rook for the gold, it's like we exchanged the rook for the lance. But on top of that, we have a token. So we have two pieces for one, kind of. Yeah, the token and lance. So it wouldn't be too bad, perhaps. What Santa did instead was to take off this pawn, take two pieces for one, and eliminate the token of the board. Yeah. So yeah, we gave back some material. We gave a bishop back to Gote, but now Gote's attack is a little bit slower because this pawn would have to promote and then come back to be threatening. So this is Santa's plan to do something in the meantime so that they can counterattack. The problem, perhaps, well, speaking from the computer analysis, yeah, what Santa did was push in the middle and then drop another pawn, which looks like a good attack on the king's head, but it wasn't threatening enough, perhaps. Computer preferred to attack the knight's head here to disturb those piece connection over here, and therefore allowing a better rook drop, yeah? That was an interesting idea. Here a pawn drop to 7-5. This made the game quite surprisingly equal. You could perhaps argue that, I mean, the analysis of this position is quite difficult. How do we approach it? Yeah, in the previous videos we talked about how to evaluate a position. So we already know that the material is equal. Yeah, we had the exchange of bishop for rook, and the gold that it's in hand belonged to Senta. It's still a Senta's piece. It achieved Sabaki, so it's more active than just being on the board. But since it was a defensive piece, maybe that's not the best. Now, if we compare those two pieces, rook seems to be more active, but it's not 100% clear because the bishop is not technically in a bad position. Gote has a token though, so they will be able to pick up more pieces and be threatening toward that king. While Senta has attack in the center, right? So both sides will have very active and threatening pieces, and it's kind of hard to evaluate who's better right now. But perhaps the next move where Senta played the knight jump and token came back and the pawn takes made it a little bit clearer that Gote's bishop will be able to be activated at some point, that Gote will be able to pick up some pieces, and that the attack is sustainable and will continue. So Senta will be in trouble. In the meantime, this pawn looks very threatening, right? It's right in front of the king. But interestingly, the follow-up is quite difficult. What Koshiro played was king 4-2 to perhaps escape gold drop with king going here. I'm not sure what the intention was, maybe to make space for a pawn drop. But apparently that wasn't necessary, and taking the lance was more interesting somehow. Perhaps lance drop, yeah, let's say a lance drop here, followed by, let's say, rook has to run, right, because the lance drop, followed by bishop sacrifice and bishop drop here, forking the rook and the king. Might have been interesting, who knows. The token sacrifice here also would drag the king up in the center of the board, toward the center of the board, and bishop drop would be also quite interesting. So this token would be quite threatening. Meantime, gold drop here, king runs here, and kind of surviving, right? Same with rook drop, king just moves. there is no finisher behind it. So perhaps this is why here the computer preferred Koshiro's side a little bit. But in my eyes, it's very difficult position. King 4-2, king 3-9. And I think this benefits Sente because clearly this king is going towards safety, while this king going to the side, it's not really clearly safer because there is opponent's rook here. And Talking will chase the king. We'll drop the pawn to protect ourselves further, which is quite interesting. And the other side will protect their sums too. But gold drop to 3. It seems like Sente is the only one who can continue attacking here, right? Of course, if the gold takes we take, we're gonna have a dragon. Looks beneficial to Sente. So, interestingly, Koshiro played this move, bishop 4-4, trying to answer gold takes gold with silver takes, and as you can see, all those promotion squares are now protected. The rook cannot really enter. They continue attacking. They decided to drop the gold to 2-2, but perhaps gold drop to 2-3 was a little bit better because of the following move. Bishop drop 1-3. And this was, if not the most important piece in the whole game. Bishop like this on the edge of the board, we like to call a sniper bishop, because it seems like it's far away from the battlefield, but like a sniper, it looks very, very far away into opponent's camp. And this is gonna be pretty intense. So those two pieces are pinned now because the bishop's double attacking the gold, so the gold has to be sacrificed, silver has to be dropped so that we have some continuance. And the rook is pushed back and the rook is blocked. And in this second, it seems like Gote achieved what they wanted. They activated the bishop, they blocked the opponent's rook, so now the difference of the activity of those two pieces is quite obvious. And perhaps this next move, a little bit passive, silver promotion to 3-4. It looks like it's chasing the bishop, but actually this is where the strongest attack is going to happen. Token was sacrificed on 7-9 square with a check. King took, and now look what happened. The king was dragged under this sniper bishop's line, which means that silver is pinned and we're able to sacrifice the other bishop, making this piece kind of hang in the air while retaining this drop. Yes, silver cannot take it, it's pinned, as we said, and we're retaining a gold drop checkmate in 1. And defending against that checkmate is pretty difficult, yeah? We can imagine like a pawn drop here, or what's going to happen is bishop drop. The other piece we can use is rook, right? There's not much pieces we can use as well. But each of those moves allow us a follow-up of, well, dragging this rook to be pinned next, right? So it looks like Sente is in a lot of trouble here. After bishop drop, we're retaining to take this for free, so takes, and here a continuation. There was a good continuation for Gote, but Koshiro missed it a little bit. So the move was to drop the gold to 8-8 to drag the king in the away in this blocked corner, right? And then to get the bishop there. If the king were to run towards this direction, we can continue the attack. The rook cannot run because gold drop is a checkmate. Yep. So one way or another, we would get the rook. Our attack would be sustainable. Our king is still relatively safe. So perhaps it's still difficult, but it would be a way to activate this bishop. And the activation of this bishop was the main point here. Koshiro dropped the gold, which unfortunately was answered with a brilliant pawn drop to 4. So now that the bishop is out of the play, suddenly Koshiro's attack is down to 3 generals. Yeah, it's not going to be enough, perhaps. And it's quite visible after we take the rook, we drop the rook, drop the silver, Seemingly we're attacking very strongly, yet the silver is pinned, so gold drop here or here would be decisive. But this other gold comes in and defends all the squares. So seeing this position, I think you can feel the difference, right? Of like whenever this bishop is in the play or not. It was huge. So check here was very important, it seems to me. And if we were to go similar line as before and block the bishop there, this is again a little bit different, right? We can pick up this piece. We can drop the rook first from the other direction, probably taking the bishop as the simplest, right? And we're not giving a gold, we're giving away a silver. So that's also the difference here. Gold is more valuable piece than the silver. So those small differences here made a big difference, yeah? Gold was a heavy move. And here we have no way of taking the bishop, right? It was a huge difference. Kind of similar position, but small difference is big difference in shogi, if you know that proverb. So yeah, because there is no follow-up to the attack, no pawn drop possible, Koshiro decides to move the king. Early king escape is worth 8 moves, we say. So here, because Gote have no effective attack, we can learn from Sente what to do in those type of situations. It's a very rare situation, right? Normally you have to win shogi match by being the first one to capture the opponent's king. But there is this rare situation where you can win by defending, by really picking up all of the opponent's pieces or like binding them, making them inactive so that you have more time to approach the opponent's king. And this is kind of what's going to happen here. Sente, even though they're technically winning, they're gonna be more defensive. So pawn drop, pawn sacrifice, pawn drop. This is a between move. This just cuts off the king access to those squares. Very nice move to remember. Do not chase the kings around him. And next, perhaps the rook drop followed by this silver coming here to attack would be problematic. So Koshiro decides to drop the gold here. And this is what we talked about even more. He has no attacking pieces anymore. So Sende has many ways to approach the situation, but they're gonna be very defensive. Pawn promotion followed by rook drop 5-5. Instead of finding way to like break through, attack, exchange more pieces, that would be risky because you would end up giving more pieces to Gote. They decide to pick up this threatening silver and go tiny bit slower, which is also a risk because if you make a mistake, you just gave up a lot of tempo, you gave the opponent a chance to counter attack. So that's what Koshiro is going to try to do, find a way to speed up his attack. He tried to activate his bishop, but kind of fails. He tries to now to drop the bishop. This is quite interesting drop because look what happens. If the rook were to move, not only this silver is hanging, this silver is also hanging. Yeah, pawn cannot move. This king is under the attack. This was very scary move, but Sente dropped another super defensive rook drop. This time, you cannot take it because the rook is blocking that bishop's line. Very cool. So we take the rook and drop it. And now the exchanges continue. But most important move will be perhaps this another defensive move, pawn drop 5-9. This is called bottom pawn tesuji. This is a pawn being right behind the gold. This shape, those two pieces protect each other very strongly and it's very hard to break. Some people call it anchor pawn, bottom pawn. It's as strong as a rock, the proverb says. If you had a lance, it's perhaps easy to break, but we don't have a lance. It's a very solid defense and it gives more time to Sente to find a counter, yeah? The rook is going to pick up some pieces, but the king is safe, as we said. So we pick up more pieces. Koshiro counters, but bishop drop through 1 pins the gold. If you were to defend this gold, this bishop becomes free. Because now this gold is pinned. So we decided to take the bishop, attack the king, have some chances, but this is a check. Have to defend, else it's a checkmate, right? Gold drop at the head is a checkmate. Defend, Atesuji follows, gold drop 5-4. Again, if the king takes, it brings us closer to the danger. And I mean, the same drop will follow. The knight is protecting those files. So very, very good endgame here. King has to run. Horse comes here. Perhaps a very scary moment for Sente because there are checks against his king. One mistake loses you the game. For example, if you were to move here by mistake, whoops, suddenly it's a checkmate, right? Bishop drop. So always be careful until the very end of the game. Even though you feel you're winning, you have to make sure everything is solid. King going to 6-7 is the only option. And now, again, this is the moment where Sente has to make a decision. How do we go about it? Do we go hard or do we go soft? And Sente decided, well, I have enough pieces to conclude the game. And they went for it. One of the endgame techniques you can learn is to basically clear off the pieces of the board and then drop your pieces. It's like the easiest way to conclude the game because you just operate with few pieces left on the board. So here, indeed, we're gonna clear off those pieces, take the silver, exchange the golds, and continue, yeah? Horse taking the golds was also a possibility, and this would be a checkmate with knight drop, clearing off all the pieces, going for the decisive. But what Sente did was this, also trying to exchange all the pieces. Perhaps in Beomi it is hard to find the right move, but beautifully concluded the game with the silver sacrifice. So why does it work? If we go back, the horse comes in. If we go here, the pawn promotes. If we go up, then you can continue the attack. King takes will bring us to that position that we talked about before, sacrificing the horse and bringing the rook here, which would be a pretty simple conclusion thanks to those cooperation of those two pieces and a gold in hand. So this is why, in this position, Koshiro has resigned. So it was quite an interesting opening, quite unusual, with the bishop lines being closed. It showed us the modern shogi theory, where you wanna attack first, and perhaps even with little bit of material loss, you just wanna creep into opponent's camp, have some attack, and be the first one to start dealing the punches. The sniper bishop was the most interesting piece in the game, and the pawn drop to 4 blocking the piece was the most amazing defense. It was a very complex game. I thought both sides have good chances, and I hope you watching this game also have learned something that you can use in your own games. Especially the bottom pawn Tesuji, the sniper bishop, or the endgame idea of clearing out all the pieces and deciding the game. In the next video, I plan to make, as I mentioned already in the beginning, a little bit of review of the book that we've been translating on our Discord. It's more about the theory of shogi, how to think in modern times, how to evaluate a position. It's a little bit advanced material, but we lack such materials in English words, and I invite you guys to take a look both on the video and on the translation that we have on our Discord channel called 7 Theories Translation channel. And yeah, let me know what did you like about this game, what would you like to see in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for staying up until here. Bye bye.